reached the dawning of a new era here on the SNS show as we're going live via Google Hangouts. This is the SNS show brought to you by Touchdown Alabama Magazine, your leader in Alabama football coverage. I'm joined live by my partner in crime, Scott Hodnett. And Scott, for the first time, our viewers can actually put a face with a name.
Yes, they can. It's a strange thing, isn't it? And I actually sound probably equal as you, so that's going to be a plus too.
That's going to be a definite plus. Well, Scott, as we all know, and as the fans know, we're under 50 days into the college football season, to be exact. I think we're at 48 days, today being July the 12th, 2014. So college football evening its way in closer now. But next week is SEC Media Days, that being the last football event before the 2014 college football season starts. SEC Media Days will once again be held at the Winfrey Hotel in Hoover, Alabama, from July 14th through July 17th. Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide will take a stand on July 17th, that Thursday. But starting on the 14th, we will have the Auburn Tigers headlined with names like Reese Dismukes at center, of course, Nick Marshall, and head coach Gus Malzahn. The Auburn Tigers took the world by storm last season with their unorthodox offense. But it's not just Auburn that will be on the podium. It'll be Auburn, most likely South Carolina, Mississippi State. Just the entire SEC as a whole will be put on display next week. But Scott, if you had to address 5 coaches coming into SEC Media Days, if you had to interview 5 coaches, which 5 would they be and why?
That's a great question. First of all, I'll go ahead and say Nick Saban, just because it'd be a great interview. A little bit intimidating probably, but it'd probably be a good one. I want to ask him how he addressed his team after the 2 losses of 2013, had the really disappointing end of the season. We were 1 quarter away from winning, 1 play away from winning and going to the SEC championship game. And I mean, those guys, most of them knew were national championships. And when it was taken away from them, they didn't really know how to feel about it. So I want to ask him how he addressed the team after that, and how he got them motivated for this season. I like to talk to Gus Malzahn, kind of the opposite of that. How big of a turnaround that was, how he had at Auburn, and how he plans to keep that train going, and how to keep his team's kind of ego down, sort of, and not because they're the ones with the target on their backs now. And as Alabama fans, we know how hard it is to play that role. It's a completely different role than the underdog. How Auburn was a lot last year, and Auburn thrives off that role. And usually when Auburn's highly ranked and come into a season, they don't do very well in past. So
are you saying the hunter has become the hunted, Scott?
They have. I do believe so. Auburn is definitely the hunted now, and we'll see how they can how it'll affect them. It is a completely different mindset. It's a 180-degree different mindset. You are the team everybody gives their 100% effort for now, like Alabama is usually, and not everybody can take it, and it's very, very different. I want to go with on the East now. I'm going to go with Will Muschamp, because he had one of the worst seasons Florida's had in our lifetimes, really, last year. We're not used to seeing Florida lose to the likes of Georgia Southern, finish 5-7, not make a bowl game. We're really, really not used to seeing that for the Gators. I want to see, and he went and hired a Duke offensive coordinator to turn that offense that has just been so stagnant underneath him. I believe I would ask him how he feels his team can bounce back, because the defense is usually there, but they kind of just lost it last season because they were out there 75% of the game because the offense was 3 and out after drive after drive after drive. So I'd ask him that. I'd ask Steve Spurrier how he plans to live life without Connor Shaw, because I know that was his main man for a few years there, and he really had a really good relationship with Connor Shaw, and they worked very, very well together. Shaw was a very tough kid. I liked him a lot. I know Spurrier loved him. He was tough on him, but I think it really, really worked out for him. And South Carolina has been really, really good the past few years. They've been almost there, just not quite there yet. And I want to see how Spurrier plans to move along, and if he feels like Dylan Thompson is the guy at South Carolina, which I do think he can do it actually. How he's going to live without Jadeveon Clowney, and how I would ask him how could be possibly a relief, sort of, because the limelight's not necessarily on one player in the defense. Now it can be a total defense, because South Carolina has had a really good defense outside of Clowney the past few years. So I think it could be a blessing in disguise losing just one guy there, instead of just there is no I in team. And I feel like South Carolina can move along as just one defense now. And after that, I'll ask, let's go with Hugh Freeze, because Ole Miss is going to be my dark horse team in the West this year. I think Ole Miss.
Oh my goodness!
I think Ole Miss is going to be extremely good this year. I'm already circling that date on the calendar when Alabama takes that trip to Oxford. I'm worried about that game already. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't. I know that Alabama usually has that number. They usually have Ole Miss's number last year. Everybody said, not everybody, but a lot of Ole Miss fans, including Bo Wallace himself, said that they were going to come to Tuscaloosa and win, and they didn't even score a point. And I really feel like this could be the year Ole Miss gets over that hump. Their offense is going to be very good, and their defense is stingy. They got Kim Dichie a year under his belt, Tony Connor with a year under his belt in the secondary. I really, really feel like Ole Miss could be a very, very tough out for anybody they play this year. And I don't think I think they take care of Boise State early on, and they really don't play many people before Alabama comes to town. So that game is circled on their calendar. We all know that. I would ask him how he expects to kind of handle that pressure when they start winning. And I'm going to say they're going to be undefeated going into the Alabama game. I want to see how he handles it differently than they handled it going to the Alabama game last year, because it probably will be a lot different, because his guys talked on Twitter. Bo Wallace, Laquan Treadwell, they talked on Twitter last year and created a lot of trash talk, and that really, really made Alabama play out of their minds on defense that game. They played a great defensive game, one of the best they played all year last year. And I want to ask if he plans on approaching that game and other big games on the schedule a little bit differently, because I really feel like Ole Miss has an opportunity to have a really good year. So those are the questions, the 5 coaches I would ask. I mean, I can ask a question to all of them really, because I have a few I want to ask them, but those are the 5 main questions I would like to ask.
Well, Scott, love the passion and the enthusiasm you displayed there, and as always, congrats to you on being able to attend, SEC Media Days as a member of Touchdown Alabama magazine. I know you're going to have a lot of fun with that.
Oh, I am. I'm just thankful to Touchdown Alabama for that opportunity. It's a dream come true, really.
Well, you mentioned Florida, and one of my good friends, Ivan White, coined this season as the Muschamp Chronicles. This is the Muschamp hot seat year, and the fact that Florida has not done much of anything since Tim Tebow, since the class that had Tebow, Percy Harvin, Jeff Demps, Chris Rainey, all of that talent offensively under Urban Meyer. I mean, you saw the cracks in the wall in Urban Meyer's last season at Florida when the Gators finished 8-5 after they lost the SEC title game that year to Alabama. I think it was the 2009 season. And the one thing I would ask Will Muschamp is, how is he going to handle recruiting? Because right now with Florida, they don't have the vertical deep threat receivers outside of Quentin Dunbar. They need the vertical deep threat receivers to help Jeff Driscoll in the passing game. Now they have some running backs in the backfield that can really pan out well and help with Driscoll. Defensively, as you mentioned, Scott, Florida has Dante Fowler, one of the best defensive linemen in the Southeastern Conference. It's going to be huge for him this season to really put pressure on the opposing quarterbacks, and to help the defense. But the coaches I would address, Scott, number one, Butch Jones. He has basically given Tennessee the most toughest gauntlet of a schedule. The Volunteers have to go to Norman and face Oklahoma, Bob Stoops, and the Sooners. We already know how much of an SEC hater Bob Stoops is. Stoops has been on record to say that the lower tier of the Big 12 is more competitive than the lower tier of the Southeastern Conference. Tennessee is a middle-tier SEC team. So this is going to be a confidence game for Tennessee heading to Norman next season, knowing if they compete with Oklahoma, if they pull the upset, great, wonderful. But if they just compete with OU, the confidence of that Tennessee team, it goes to the roof. Now, give Butch Jones credit. He's brought in 2 top 10 recruiting classes to Tennessee. One of those recruiting classes last season, which will be the last season recruiting class, will play in this upcoming season. But this season for Tennessee, it's the confidence season for Justin Worley at quarterback. He's had some good games in the past, but he hasn't had that signature game to really build his confidence. Tennessee has had quarterbacks in its history from Peyton Manning, T. Martin, Casey Clausen, Jonathan Crompton, even Tyler Bray. They've had those games where they've had the games that have built their confidence and have put them on the map of, I'm a Tennessee quarterback. When is Justin Worley going to have that game? That will be the question this year. Now, the Volunteers do bring back Marquez North, very talented, skilled receiver. They have Jason Kroom at 6'5", another guy that can stretch the field. But this is Tennessee's time to see, can Butch Jones lead this team to wins? He's given them the toughest schedule in the SEC and let alone the nation. Tennessee Volunteer fans have been praying for the days of Philip Fulmer. They've been praying for the days of Philip Fulmer to come back, where the Volunteers competed for SEC championships. They've competed for big-time bowl games. Can Butch Jones be that coach to get them back? That's his question, and that's his pill to swallow. Number 2, Mark Richt. Mark Richt has been coaching Georgia since 2001. He's been at the helm for 11 to 12 seasons. The last time, Scott, Mark Richt won an SEC title, marked 2005. Georgia had a quarterback by the name of DJ Shockley that year. Yep. The only 2 titles Georgia's won, 2002 and 2005. I know a lot of people talk about there's no more Mettenberger, there's no more Manziel, there's no more A.J. McCarron. Well, guess what, baby? There's no more Aaron Murray. He was one of the purest passers in the SEC last season, a complete winner, and what toughness he showed. Played on a torn ACL. He's gone. Mark Richt has to put in Hudson Mason. Now, no offense to Hudson Mason. Came out of Marietta, Georgia, very highly talented recruit, and the fortunate thing for him is, Scott, all the pieces are back and healthy offensively. You get healthy Todd Gurley, a healthy Keith Marshall, a healthy Justin Scott Wesley, a healthy Chris Conley, a healthy Malcolm Mitchell. Georgia has a chance to win 8+ games next season. But the thing I want to ask Mark Richt, Georgia's not a mediocre team, but they're in the middle of being good and being great. When will Georgia get back and win an SEC title? They had a chance to do it in 2012 against Alabama in that brilliant game from Todd Gurley, brilliant game from Aaron Murray. But as we know, Scott, a 45-yard hookup from A.J. McCarron to Amari Cooper put the dagger in the heart to Georgia that game. Georgia lost that game 32-28. When will Mark Richt get back to Atlanta, to an SEC title, and close the deal and win? Another coach that I would have to address is Mark Stoops of Kentucky. And I know a lot of people are going to laugh at me. Really, Stephen? Mark Stoops, Kentucky? And you call yourself an analyst? Look, Mark Stoops has brought in 2 top 25 recruiting classes. Kentucky, like Tennessee, Scott, is the battle of who can get to the ceiling first. Both teams are building the floor. There's the battle of which team can get to the ceiling first. And my question for Mark Stoops, can he get the fans in the Big Blue chirping a little bit? Can he get chirping a little bit in the fact that it's not just a state where horses run wild. It's not just a state for John Calipari in basketball. And you're rivaling with Louisville. Can Kentucky put together a decent season? I'm not saying 7 wins. I'm saying at least 6. Can they sneak at least 6 and kind of put together a season where the fans can say, okay, maybe we have something here. It's not quite where we want it, but maybe we have something here. The next coach I would address, Scott, Dan Mullen, Mississippi State. He's been at Hail State, Starkville, Cowbell Nation for 5 seasons now. Mississippi State has been to a bowl game in all 5 seasons. Like Georgia, Mississippi State, not mediocre, but they're stuck between good and great. Could this be the year that State gets over the hump? You bring back Dak Prescott, and regardless of what many people may say, Mississippi State's offense looked a whole lot better under Dak Prescott than Tyler Russell. Russell's the better passer, but when you talk about the warrior mentality, the mentality of guys, let's get it done, Dak Prescott had that mentality. Now, last season, he had just 13 touchdown passes. He passed for 1,942 yards. He struggled a bit with ball placement, but Dak Prescott's most damage came on the ground. He had 13 rushing touchdowns, 129 yards on the ground. He's a dual-threat guy. My question for Dak Prescott, can he put it all together this season? Passing. Can he place the ball in the right spots, use his checkdowns wisely, and find open receivers? He has Jamion Lewis returning and De'Runyon Wilson, 2 physical receivers who can stretch the field. Defensively for Mississippi State, it's Benardrick McKinney. He's on the Nagurski watch this year and the Chuck Benderek Award watch this year. He led the team with 70 tackles, 3.5 sacks. Mississippi State, no more Nico Whitley, but Jamerson Love is back in that secondary. So it's going to be huge for Jamerson Love and Tavez Calhoun to really play well in that back 5 for Mississippi State. Last but not least, Scott, Kevin Sumlin. It's the end of Johnny Manziel. Who's next? It's the end for Mike Evans. Who's next? Texas A&M, they have Kyle Allen, they have Kenny Hill. Who's the quarterback? Defensively, can Texas A&M stop the run game? In every game that was broadcasted by CBS last year, Vernon Lundquist and Gary Daniels brought up the stat that Texas A&M gave up 6 yards a rush. They can't allow that to happen next season. They got to be focused and disciplined on defense, starting from the defensive line, linebacking core, to the secondary. But those are my guys I would address, Scott. Dan Mullen, Mark Richt, Bill Muschamp, Butch Jones, Mark Stoops, and Kevin Sumlin. This is going to be a very interesting SEC season, but I honestly feel like despite the uncertainty, my God, is there a lot of excitement or what?
Man, I love your 5 guys. I love how they're 5 different on both of us. Almost the entire conference we kind of talked about a little bit here. And just if I can, let me put a little bit of comments on some of the stuff you said, if you don't mind. The Butch Jones stuff I completely agree with. And if I had to pick one dark horse team for the East, it will be Tennessee. I don't think they'll win it, but I think they're going to be significantly better. And I think Tennessee is a year or 2 away from making some actual noise in the East. They're their defense, the way they're recruiting, the class they have coming in this year and the class they have for 2015 already on the defensive line mostly is getting very good, and which is you have to have that to compete in the SEC in the trenches, especially with the offensive lines the way they are. So I believe that Tennessee is getting close. I think I think they're going to be just as good this year as they were under Dooley's best year. I think they could win 8 games this year even. As far as Kentucky goes, I don't see it for Kentucky, but you said they have the good classes coming in too, and I think they could win maybe 5. It's possible they could win 6 games this year, but I don't know. It's gonna be tough. I feel like if they could do it, this could be the year because the East is so strange this year. I mean, like you said with Mark Richt, does Georgia do it this year? They're extremely talented. Their whole team's talented. Mason's a good quarterback. They have the best linebacking core in maybe the country. I think their linebacking core, them and Alabama have the 2 best linebacking cores in the country probably. Is their secondary good enough? They lost so many people in the secondary. But can they do it? Can South Carolina do it? Tennessee, Florida. The East is up for grabs even more than the West is. I think the West is a little more top-heavy with Alabama, Auburn, and LSU up there a little bit. LSU's a mystery too this year. So, as you said, I really like the guys you picked. And as far as A&M goes, is it Kenny Hill? Is it Kyle Allen? Just plug the guys in the Sullivan system. They're going to have success offensively. Defense is the big thing with that. Will Myles Garrett come in and be an SEC freshman of the year? Maybe so. That kid is a beast on the defensive end, and he will start from day one, and he will play every game 3 seasons and leave. He is that good. He is a first-round draft pick written all over him. And he is a much, much needed weapon for A&M's defense to get something on the defensive line to get to the quarterback. And can they do that? I think they take a step back with no Manziel. But 2 years ago, we didn't know who Johnny Manziel was, and he came out of nowhere. Can Kyle Allen, can Kenny Hill do that this year? Who knows? So,
who knows is a good question, Scott. It will be interesting to see, what Texas A&M does and what all of these teams in the SEC do as we prepare for the Southeastern Conference Media Days on next week. Well, now, Scott, we're going to get into the fun stuff. Alabama football, how about that? The list for, of course, the Jim Thorpe Award list was announced this week. Alabama safety Landon Collins made that list. The Maxwell Award list was out, and we had the likes of T.J. Yeldon, Amari Cooper, Derrick Henry, and Jacob, my name is Coker, made the list. We had the Outland Award trophy watching list out. Ryan Kelly, Ari Kwanjo, and even Ashawn Robinson found his name on that list. So a lot of Alabama players getting some recognition early. Scott, how do you feel about that? Seeing the Alabama Crimson Tide players getting some early recognition for these lists, whether it's the Outland Award, the Benderek Award, Nagurski Award, just seeing the players that Saban recruits and brings in and how they really pride themselves on being the best and making lists like these.
Oh yeah, I definitely think they do. They love to see their name on the preseason lists. I mean, they'd rather see their name on the postseason list, I guess you'd say, when it's a lot shorter. But I think it speaks volumes to the kind of pressure Jacob Coker will be under though at the beginning of the year, because he's never started a game in college, and he's on the Maxwell Award list at a school like Alabama, that's a lot of pressure for anybody. And as far as other guys on that list, you said Amari Cooper. I think Amari Cooper really wants to bounce back and have a really, really good year this year. I think T.J. Yeldon really wants to have a good year. Derrick Henry wants to get out there and get his feet wet some more, be that number 2 guy. I think he knows he can be it. As far as Jim Thorpe, Landon Collins has Jim Thorpe written all over him. He is that good. He's a headhunter. He knows where the ball is going to be. He's the best safety in the country, I think. As far as Ashawn Robinson being on the Outland list, did you say Outland for him?
It was the Outland. Surprising, isn't it?
Yeah, that is surprising. Usually Outland goes to offensive linemen, but if the defensive lineman's that good, i.e. Ndamukong Suh won it. stuff like that will happen. I think A'Shawn Robinson's going to have a really, really, really good year. I think him and Jonathan Allen both are. They're going to be a big, big part of the defensive line that Alabama's they have to have success there to take some pressure off the secondary, we've talked about in the weeks past. And I think they have the weapons on that defensive line to do it this year. And A'Shawn Robinson could be the best guy on that team, on the defensive line. Who else did you say? Anybody else?
Ryan Kelly and also Ari Kwanjo made the Outland Award list.
Okay. A good year. It's going to be interesting to see Ari without Cyrus there. See if he can make kind of a name for himself a little bit more and not playing next to his brother. It could be better for him. And as far as Ryan Kelly goes, he has the ability to be one of the best centers in the country. The offensive line is his. He's the anchor of that offensive line, and he's got to do something to get that line better than it was last year. And I think it can definitely be better than it was last year.
I honestly feel like this offensive line and the defensive line for Alabama can be scary good next season. You talk about a lot of players coming back, a lot of experience, some youth there, but talented youth, and youth that the likes of Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, and Lane Kiffin can mold to be productive. But here's the fun part, Scott. We're going to play a little Alabama fantasy football right here.
Okay.
If you had a chance to pick your own dynasty team from any Alabama player you want, we're talking about from the 40s, 50s, 60s, you name it. If you had to pick your Alabama offensive lineup, defensive lineup, special teams lineup for a fantasy football team, who would you pick?
Okay. How are we doing this? You gonna pick a quarterback and I'm gonna pick a quarterback, or like that, or what are you gonna do?
All right, we'll start with you first. You will pick a quarterback, a running back,
okay,
a receiver.
One running back, one quarterback, one receiver.
Yeah.
Okay. As far as a quarterback, I gotta go Joe Namath, man, all the way. Joe Namath, quarterback. I think he's the best quarterback to ever play for Alabama. As far as just talent goes, the era he played in, if he played now, who knows, but Joe Namath is the guy, man, back in the day, and I grew up watching old videos of Joe Namath play, and I just always loved Joe Namath and the character he became. Even more after that, I love it. I think it's awesome. Broadway Joe. I'm gonna take Joe Namath as my number one pick right there as my quarterback. Running back, I'm gonna have to go with a guy who I idolized when I was growing up. I was 12, 13, 14 years old. A guy named Shaun Alexander, man, and I believe Shaun Alexander is the best running back to ever play at Alabama. I know in the past few seasons that list has become a little closer to him with guys like Ingram, Trent Richardson, Eddie Lacy, T.J. Yeldon, all those guys, but I'm going to still stick with Shaun Alexander being my number one running back to ever play at Alabama because he won the 1999 SEC championship by himself almost. Him and Chris Samuels did. He was unstoppable that year. And as far as a wide receiver goes, I can only have one. I can't have two or three.
You know what? Pick four.
Four? Okay, I'll pick four. With wide receivers, I'm going to have to go Julio Jones because I think he is the most physical he's the best physical specimen to ever play Alabama wide receiver-wise. I'll take him. I'll take David Palmer, who also I grew up watching. The Deuce, he was the best back then, and he would be my kickoff punt returner too, all the way. And I'll go with Amari Cooper. I know he's young still, but I think he could leave Alabama as one of the best ever. That's a tough one after that.
Come on, Scott. You know his name.
I know his name, man. Let's think here.
You on your computer?
I got my list here, guys. Let's see who I'm forgetting who I had written down over here. Let's see.
Why not the Wizard? Ozzie Newsome.
Ozzie, he'd be my tight end, man. He'd be my tight end or wide receiver. He's both. He was kind of like O.J. Howard is, you know. I'll take that. I'll take that, or I will also, you know who I'll throw a wild card in there, man. I'll take a Kevin Norwood any day, man. I just, you know, my love for Kevin Norwood. I have a man crush on him. I always have. And hey, if I'm playing fantasy football and I need a touchdown, who am I going to go after? I need a first down. I'm going to go after Kevin Norwood. Man, I'll take that. Are we doing offensive lineman, or we aren't doing that because you don't play that fantasy football, right?
No, we're not. We're not going to do offensive and defensive linemen. We'll probably save that for next week.
Okay, that's fine. Because there's been some great ones too, as you know.
Well, for me, quarterback, as much as I would say A.J. McCarron, I'm going to go with Kenny Stabler. Reason why Kenny Stabler, just the grit that he played with, the creativity, the toughness, his ability to guide the Alabama football team under Paul Bear Bryant. Kenny Stabler would be my quarterback. Running back, you had Sean Alexander. Great move, great pick. I'm going to go with Mark Ingram, Heisman Trophy winner. The guy basically in 2009 helped put Alabama back to prominence for the first time since Gene Stallings in 1992-93. So Mark Ingram, Heisman winner, Wildcat offense all day, every day. Love Mark Ingram. Receivers, I would go, as you mentioned, Julio Jones, number one. The guy was the first big-time recruit that Saban brought into the system when he came in 2007, 2008. So that'd be Julio Jones. Number two, David Palmer. I mean, the deuce is loose. When Eli Gold would say that, he would be loose, and he would be on that field wreaking havoc on opposing secondaries and making plays. Number three, Marquise Mays. I will take Marquise Mays. You talk about a little undersized, but great playmaker on special teams, great receiver offensively, great guy to go to when you're trying to run a screen. So I like Marquise Mays. Number four, Kevin Norwood, one of the best clutch receivers in Alabama history, a guy that he wasn't talked about in conversations, but when you talk about letting your game speak for itself, Kevin Norwood let his game speak for itself, and he answered the bill time and time again. As you mentioned, I would take Ozzie Newsome. He's a mix. He's just like, as we said, O.J. Howard. Ozzie Newsome, one of the best wide receivers, tight ends to ever play at Alabama. Great hands, great speed, and just his knowledge for the game. Ozzie Newsome had such a knowledge for the game of football. He can line up at tight end and beat you blocking. He can go out and make catches as a receiver. He can beat you with speed, and that's also what O.J. Howard brings to the table. Though he needs to improve as a blocker, him being O.J. Howard, but he can line up as a receiver and beat you with speed. He can come out the backfield, catch passes as a tight end. He can become that total package and that real dual threat tight end in the future as he continues to learn, being O.J. Howard, as he continues to learn under Saban, under Kiffin, and really help out Jacob Coker, as Coker becomes the starting quarterback. Well, one of the huge signs this week, Scott, the Elite 11 camp with Trent Dilfer. Blake Barnett, how about this young man? His team, the Apocalypse, won the tournament. Blake Barnett, Calvin Ridley, Elite 11 MVPs. How special can these two young men be when they come to Alabama next season?
I think they can be both very, very special. Blake Barnett, when he signed with or when he committed to us, I knew it was a really, really big commitment. It made the Ricky Town decommitment when he went to USC. It made it a lot easier to swallow when a guy like Blake Barnett comes. And we were actually able to see him a little bit more in action this week than just videos and stuff. And he's the real deal. He's a great arm.
Did you see the cannon on this kid? Just the cannon, the mechanics, his ability just to read where to throw the football. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yep, this kid's 17 years old, hasn't even played his senior year in high school yet, and he already looks that good. I think he could pick up a 5th star in some of the. He's a 4-star right now, but he has 5-star written all over him to me. As the same with Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley, he is a 5-star in maybe one of the websites, but he's a 4-star. and on most of them. And I think he could pick up a 5-star too. He gets off the block so fast. He just has great hands. He made that one-handed crazy catch this week. He just beats coverages so well. He just gets a lot of separation, and they had a lot of chemistry together, which is great to see. Will Blake Barnett come in and start as a true freshman? Probably not, but who knows? He could come in, and if everything goes well, Jacob Coker will be there this year in 2015 and then graduate, and then it could be Blake Barnett's team. It could be David Cornwell's team. We have a lot of options there, but I think Blake Barnett is one of the better quarterback commitments I've ever seen in Alabama. He looks better than AJ did coming into college. He looks better than Brody Kroll even. Brody Kroll was very, very, very highly rated coming in. He looks just as good as Brody, if not better. So I love what I see, and I think Calvin Ridley could come and play next year as a freshman. You know how that goes with wide receivers, and we're going to be losing Amari Cooper. We're going to be losing DeAndre White. We're going to be losing some guys in the receiving core this year. So Calvin Ridley can make some noise next year even. But like you said, the chemistry they had together, it looks great. It was great to see them both get on the same team. And it was great to see them both win the MVPs. And I'm sure the rest of the country's like, of course, they're both going to Alabama, you know? So.
Do you know what I love the most about that, though, Scott? This is what I love the most about that whole Elite 11. Tom Luginbill repeatedly asked Blake Barnett, who do you thank for allowing you to get the MVP? Who do you appreciate in the game that you won with your team, the Apocalypse? And Blake Barnett, after every question, yelled, "Roll Tide." Like, he is excited about coming to the University of Alabama. Blake Barnett answered every question with "Roll Tide," and that did it for me. Like, I was sold. Yep. I was absolutely sold on Blake Barnett after every Tom Luginbill question he answered with "Roll Tide." And I agree. We talk about in the Elite 11 camps, Trent Dilfer does an unbelievable job of preparing these guys for the next level. And for these guys to take coaching from him, it's amazing. And just to see Blake Barnett on that field executing, I mean, you can tell the footwork, the vision, the ability to scan the field, the accuracy, the ball placement, just his ability to read and to break down, it's unbelievable. And when you get him underneath Lane Kiffin, it's going to be a sight to see. It's going to be a destiny, in the making. And especially if he hangs on with his commitment, really become that 5-star, as you mentioned, and come to the University of Alabama. And Calvin Ridley, you talk about high riser, leaping ability to snatch the ball out of the air, can stretch the field, savvy route runner. Not saying that I'm not trying to push Amari Cooper and DeAndre White out of the door, but those two guys, especially DeAndre White, may be leaving next season. And when you have guys like Calvin Ridley, Cameron Sims, Robert Foster, Raheem Falcons, guys that can come in and really pick up the slack, it just speaks wonders about how well this Alabama football team can recruit, the coaching staff recruits, and it speaks to when you do the little things right, you're going to find a spot in the army of Nick Saban.
Yep, I agree. And kind of bringing it back full circle, how we were talking about earlier about bringing it back to Will Muschamp in Florida. I mean, the reason that they don't get the deep threat guys is because they all come to Alabama. They all go to Florida State. They're losing those guys. Usually, the big time receivers didn't go to Alabama. That is not an old time thing. That has just happened very recently from Florida. It really happened when Chris Black and Amari Cooper, the number 1 and number 2 receivers out of Florida in 2011, when they in that class, when they both chose Alabama, which was a very, very big deal. Florida missed out on both of those guys. I mean, imagine what if Florida had Amari Cooper? They wouldn't have won 5 games last year. Probably it would be a safety valve for Jeff Driscoll. Look at it that way. And another guy, Calvin Ridley. It's just that's a big, big reason Florida's missing out on these guys. just to bring it back full circle, how we're saying with that, and how Alabama is recruiting receivers these days is amazing.
It's unbelievably talented, amazing, gifted, and unreal. Like, it's absolutely unreal how the Crimson Tide, Nick Saban's able to go out and get the players he wants and get players the Crimson Tide needs for its system. You mentioned Chris Black. Chris Black and Amari Cooper both came in at the same time. Chris Black was a little bit more heralded than Amari Cooper. We all know the story of Chris Black injured his shoulder and some practice. DeAndre White, 2012, supposed to have been his year, injured an ACL. Amari Cooper came out of nowhere and just took over the scene in 2012, 59 receptions, 1,000 yards, and 11 touchdowns as a freshman. This year could be Chris Black's year to say, I'm here. This is why you brought me here. This could be the season. Chris Black, as we know, versatile. You can flank him at running back, he'll make plays. You can put him at wide receiver, he'll make plays. You can put him as a return specialist, he'll make plays. The question is, how often will Lane Kiffin use Chris Black?
That's a tough question. I mean, you look at Chris Black and you see the talent. He just reeks of talent all over him. I'm not sure why he hasn't got on the field more. I know besides the injuries, I know his freshman season he had the shoulder injury, which really hurt him a lot. It set him back a little bit, but I don't really understand why he wasn't on the field a little bit more last year. The only thing I can think of is just the other guys are just a little bit better than him right now. But that will make him work harder, and we all know if a guy with that much talent gives 110%, the ceiling is endless for him. So does he get on the field more this year? I think so. I think Kiffin will use him in possibly more of, let's say, in different roles, like you were saying, put him in the backfield some more maybe. Put him, I don't know. I definitely think that he will be used more this season, though, in Kiffin's offense. But guys like Robert Foster are there. Guys, I don't think Cam Sims may redshirt, but as far as Robert Foster is going to get some playing time this year, and he could be top 3, top 4 receivers, and he will get a lot of playing time. But as far as Chris Black goes, he has the talent there. So let's hope we see it, and Kiffin utilizes it as much as possible this year.
Well, Scott, first of all, you look great, by the way.
Thanks, man.
You have an opportunity to attend SEC Media Days on Monday, and for you get the chance to talk with or interview not only Nick Saban, but for the first time since 2001, Alabama sends a receiver to SEC Media Days. And not just one, baby, they send 2. Amari Cooper and Christian Jones will both be at SEC Media Days along with Landon Collins at that safety position. Many people have talked about how interesting of an interview Christian Jones is. Very funny guy, laid-back guy. You know, Amari Cooper can give a lot of great sound bites as well. How excited are you, Scott, to go to Hoover on Monday and really interview 3 of the best players that Alabama has to offer?
Oh, man, I'm very excited about it. We were talking about it earlier about Christian Jones. He is just a hilarious guy. Like, we've seen a lot of interviews with him before, just a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff, and he just seems like a really down-to-earth, like just a funny guy, not even saying how good of a football player he really is, and how far he's come since he's been a freshman. I remember in the LSU National Championship game when Mays got hurt, he was the punt returner, and I remember how worried I was about that. And he was back there, cool character, calm as a cucumber, man, just catching every punt. And ever since that day, I've loved Christian Jones, and he has had a lot of great games since then. He's one of the top 2 or 3 return specialists in America now. So I'm looking forward to talking to him a little bit. Amari Cooper, I mean, it's not every day you talk to a future top 10 draft pick probably. So I want to ask him how he plans to bounce back from his little bit of sophomore slump, not much. I know he had that toe injury is what really put him back a little bit last year. I'm going to ask them how they like playing under Lane Kiffin and how that system differs from Nussmeier's system, which I know it will differ a lot from it. And Landon Collins, like I said earlier, he's the best safety in America, and I want to see how he wants to bounce back, because I know Landon Collins takes it personal when that defense gives up a point. And I'm going to see how he wants to bounce back from the disappointment of last season and that Oklahoma really bad defensive performance, really. And so, yeah, man, I'm very excited about seeing all the coaches and talking to the players and stuff.
It's going to be a lot of excitement, as we talked about, Scott, a lot of uncertainty going into next season, but a lot of excitement knowing that in the SEC, you're going to always expect competition, you're going to always expect a lot of toughness, and you're going to expect coaches that are going to get each and every player prepared to win football games. Well, Scott, we're going to play a little game here as we end the show called Buy or Sell. You ready to play?
Yeah, sure, let's go.
We're going to play buy or sell. Number one, Mississippi State gets 8 wins this season. Do you buy that?
I buy it. All the way. Like I said earlier, I think Ole Miss is my dark horse team in the West, but Mississippi State's right there on them. I really do think Mississippi State wins 8 games this year. I buy that.
All right, you're buying that. Number two, we have Steve Sarkisian for USC. He comes in on the hot seat. Don't know why, but Steve Sarkisian comes in on the hot seat. USC wins 9 games in Sarkisian's first year. Buy or sell?
That's a tough one right there. I'm going to buy that with just the talent that they have at USC right now. I mean, they won 10 games last year without Kiffin. They fired Kiffin a fourth of the way through the season last year, and I'm going to buy 9 games. I think they can win 9 games again. I think it's right at 9, though. I don't think they win 10 games again, but, they could. I'm going to buy 9 games again.
All right. Here's another buy or sell. Auburn's unorthodox offense took the world by storm last season. They led the league in rushing, averaging 328.3 yards per game. There's no more Trey Mason, though Nick Marshall, Cameron Artis-Payne, Corey Grant still there. Buy or sell? Auburn's offense averages 400 yards rushing next season.
Sell all the way. They're not going to average 400 yards rushing. They could average 300 again, which I think it would be a very potent offense again. But everybody also has a year to prepare for a little bit more. They have a gauntlet of a schedule, too. Their schedule is very, very tough. My dog's barking.
Hey, yeah. Nothing wrong with your animal loving some SEC football.
Nothing wrong, but yeah, I'm going to sell that. I think Auburn's going to be very good again, though.
All right, and the final buy or sell, Scott. Jacob Coker, coming in, Alabama quarterback, Florida State transfer. Buy or sell? Jacob Coker tosses 30 touchdown passes year 1.
I hope it's a buy. I'm gonna say sell with that one. I'm gonna say it's somewhere around 20, 26, 27. Because you got to remember you got T.J. Yeldon, Derrick Henry, and Kenyon Drake in that backfield too, getting you down there. I'm gonna say sell, but it's close, man, and I hope he does.
Well, I hope he does too, Scott. Like I mentioned, Jacob Coker, first season with Lane Kiffin in Alabama. He comes in, was talented, hyped players coming into this season for the Crimson Tide. Hopefully, he is up to the hype. He's as good as advertised. I think he is. The fan base thinks he is. But we will know for certain when West Virginia comes calling on August 30th, 2014. The first day of Alabama summer practice is August 1st, 2014. Well, this is all the time we have today on the S&S Show, brought to you by Touchdown Alabama Magazine, your leader in Alabama football coverage. I was joined today by the suave, debonair, and SEC Media Days ready, my partner in crime, Scott Hodnett. Scott, it's always a joy to be here with you.
Hey, man, you too, Steven. Anytime, man. All the time.
All right.